come and discover Portugal with us. Please like, subscribe and leave your comment. Your support and opinions are very important to us. Thank you. The spa area of São Pedro do Sul is a vast therapeutic and hotel complex located on the banks of the river Voga between São Pedro do Sul to the north and Vozela to the south. This is one of the most important thermal spas in Portugal, which grew significantly from the end of the 19th century when Queen Amélie of Orléans was treated here. At that time, a new and large spa building was built and named after this monarch, discontinuing activity in the original spa complex, which had been in use for almost 2000 years. The history of São Pedro do Sul is inextricably linked to its thermal springs, where the water rises to the surface at a temperature of 68.7 degrees Celsius. They have been used since Paleolithic times as a source of heat. Nearby are several archaeological sites such as Castro do Banho, a fortified settlement from the Iron Age, 1st millennium BC, that was later Romanized in the 1st century AD. In the same century, the first Roman thermal spa was built here on the north bank of the river Voga, giving rise to the association of the Latin name balneum, bath, with this region. The first phase of construction is thought to have taken place in the Julio-Claudian era, with the entrance located on the east side, giving access to the natatio, a large outdoor cold water pool. Inside there was a hot water pool, the caldarium, and the space corresponding to the tepidarium, an area of intermediate temperature. In a second phase, between the 1st and 2nd centuries, the hot water pool was completely remodeled, and another indoor pool was added, which would later be known as the women's pool. A cooling tank was also added on the west side. This Roman bathhouse continued to be used throughout the Middle Ages, when it acquired the name Caldas de Lafões. In the 16th century, King Manuel I of Portugal ordered the creation of a royal hospital, with the building undergoing a third phase of construction. By this time, the outdoor swimming pool had been deactivated and buried. Inside, a second floor was created and a new volume was added in the middle, which would later house the Chapel of Our Lady of Health. Later, in the 19th century, the women's pool was transformed into the bathtubs room. The construction of the Queen Amélie Spa building in 1884 meant that the old thermal baths were abandoned and continued to be used only by people of limited means. In 1931, the building was transformed into a primary school, which operated until 1954. Although it had been classified as a national monument since 1938, its deterioration worsened over the decades. In 1995, floods from the river Voga caused several structures to collapse. It took until 2023 for the Roman baths of São Pedro do Sul to be properly valued as one of the most important in Portugal, after a remarkable rehabilitation and musealization project. On the east side of the complex, we can see the large outdoor pool, which has since been dug up and restored, and which corresponded to the natatio of Roman times. Around it are traces of the colonnade that surrounded this area. The pool is 67 feet long and 29 feet wide, with a depth of 5 feet. On the north facade of the building, we can still see a Roman door with a round arch. Walking around the outside of the complex, on the west side, we find the cooling tank where the water from the thermal springs was accumulated, so that its temperature could be lowered to a tolerable level for the bathers. Still on the south side, there are traces of the stone channeling that carried the water from the tank to the various pools inside. On the wall, the buttresses have some cushioned ashlars, typical of Roman architecture. Inside is the Chapel of Our Lady of Health, which was consecrated in one of the compartments of the Royal Hospital of Caldas-Lafões and was mentioned in 1732. Its altarpiece dates back to the 18th century. In another room, 2 stones with votive inscriptions are on display. One of them, dating from the 1st century AD, was found inside the outdoor pool. It contains a vow of thanks from Magius and Victoria to the god Mercury Aguaicus for the cure of their son Magius Saturninus. The other inscription displayed here refers to the waters of Aulu Plautu Decianu, which could be the name by which these baths were known in Roman times, mentioning the name of the man who had them built. Access to the indoor pool is via an ogival portal, created between the end of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th century, with plant decoration, vine branches and quadrifoliums, surmounted by the representation of a feline's head and a human face. The ancient Roman caldarium kept its pool practically unchanged for almost 2 millennia, given its continuous use until the 19th century. It is 24.3 feet long, 17.7 feet wide and 4 feet deep. It is fed by 2 pipes, one of which supplies cold water and the other hot water from the hot springs via the cooling tank outside. The mouth of one of these pipes is carved in the shape of an animal's snout, perhaps as a way of easily identifying the one that carried hot water. From the end of the 12th century onwards, this tank became known as the Pool of King Afonso Henriques, following the stay of the first king of Portugal in these baths. In May 1169, the monarch had joined Geraldo, known as Fearless Geraldo, in the siege of Badajoz. Surprised by the arrival of Leonese reinforcements, the Portuguese forces retreated. While fleeing on horseback, Afonso Henriques, who was around 60 years old at the time, hit the thigh of his right leg against the bolts of one of the fortification's doors, suffering serious injuries and a probable fracture of the femur. In the autumn of 1169, the monarch went to Caldas-Lafões to recover from his injury. He had lodgings built for himself and the members of the court who accompanied him, as well as for the poor who wanted to enjoy the thermal waters. On the other bank of the river, he ordered the construction of a leprosarium for the treatment of lepers. In the next room, there are vestiges from various periods when these baths were used, particularly the indoor pool built in Phase 1 in the 1st century AD, with the start of the steps and parts of the side wall still visible. This pool was later demolished and replaced by the one we saw earlier, which has survived to this day. The arched door dates from the same period. The upper windows correspond to interventions carried out in the 16th century. We can also see a doorway that connected this room to the bathtub's annex, created in the 19th century, and part of the stoneware tiling that corresponded to the floor of the bathroom built in the 20th century when this building was converted into a primary school. In the so-called bathtubs room, there are also vestiges from various periods of this building's life, including part of a small Roman-era swimming pool lined with opus signinum, a waterproofing mortar. This pool was altered in the Middle Ages and then completely covered with granite slabs. This space would correspond to the so-called women's pool, since the other indoor pool was reserved for men only. At the beginning of the 19th century, this annex was enlarged and the previous pools were filled in and 5 bathtubs built over them, lined with blue and white tiles, which were used exclusively by women. On the upper floor there is an exhibition area exploring the history of thermal baths with a special focus on Roman times, mentioning their different spaces and their respective functions. This upper level was created in the Middle Ages, taking advantage of the 23.6 feet high ceiling of the Roman structure, which was originally covered with a barrel vault built in opus caementicium, known as Roman cement. The vault would be plastered with corrugated stucco, and these longitudinal grooves would allow the condensation of the vapor to be diverted to the side walls, preventing it from dripping onto the bathers. The establishment of the Royal Hospital in the 16th century, by order of King Manuel I, profoundly changed the status of these baths, which were no longer free to use and were now managed by the House of Cavalry in Vozela. With this change, the Couto da Vila do Banho, corresponding to the former Caldas de Lafões, was created, with its own rents, which were granted in November 1502 to Fernão Lopes de Almeida. The extensive remodeling of the baths, which included the arches in the side walls of the pool room, did not completely obliterate the original Roman structures, allowing many of them to remain visible to this day. In 1638, the House of the Magistrate, now gone, was built close to the thermal baths and along the banks of the river. In 1684, during the Philippine era, the baths were enlarged with the construction of 4 new rooms, corresponding to the current east facade of the building, through which the entrance was made. A few meters to the east of the spa building is the Chapel of St. Martin, whose original construction dates back to the 9th or 10th century. The chapel that exists today is the result of reconstructions carried out at the beginning of the 16th century, as can be seen from the date inscribed on the ogival portal, 1508. The original temple was larger, and the current one corresponds only to the space occupied by its chancel. Giles of Santarém, a friar who was born in Vozela at the end of the 12th century and is the town's patron saint, was baptized here. On the chapel's east facade, the upper part of a bifora from the original building was incorporated in the wall, revealing a decorative style of Asturian influence. Oral tradition indicates that the stones for this chapel were brought from a hill near Castro do Banho. Its original construction is associated with the presence of the Asturian Leonese prince Bermudo Ordóñez in the region of Lafões during the 10th century. Even today, the Chapel of St. Martin is a focus of popular devotion, a place of promises expressed through the wax ex votos that are deposited here, related to the benefits of the thermal spring. At the end of 2023, a fire destroyed part of the chapel's contents. Thank you for discovering Portugal with us. If you liked the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to follow our new releases.